This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
Coming up on This Week in Agribusiness, Ag Secretary Tom Vilsack makes the rounds in farm country. Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson in the studio this week, and in Washington D.C., work on the Farm Bill might be paused in Congress, but the USDA is still busy. Ag Secretary Tom Vilsack recently has been traveling across the heartland, and Jennifer Carrico, editor at Wallace's Farmer, recently had the chance to hear him up in Lime Springs. Jennifer, thanks for taking the time to talk with us this week.
Thank you, Mike.
Secretary Vilsack speaking at a beef processing plant in Lime Springs, Iowa. Jennifer, was ag labor on the table for discussion?
Oh, for sure. Actually, the manager of the plant, Ed Greiman, is a personal friend of mine, so it was good to see him and hear what is going on up there at the Upper Iowa Beef plant. And certainly labor is an issue that he discussed and things that they have to deal with on a daily basis. But I think that that's something that there's a shortage of in agriculture all across the U.S. and certainly in the packing industry, whether it be beef or pork or even on the poultry side. I think that is something that they deal with quite commonly.
I think you're right, and I hear those concerns from nearly everybody in the ag supply chain this year. Jennifer, the other thing I'm curious about, this administration's talked a lot about small and mid-sized farmers. Did the Secretary address that at all in his comments?
He did. He talked about how many farms have I guess, gone away since in his lifetime, and it was quite a big number, and how lots of farms have gotten bigger because the smaller farmer doesn't have the markets for their products. And so I think that the USDA is working on different programs to provide those markets, whether it be at a local level to a school or whatever it might be, just to provide a little bit more money to those farmers. He talked about how I think it was 16 cents of go at a local grocery store, 16 cents of a product goes to the farmer out of $1, and that's pretty eye-opening when you're a farmer yourself.
It certainly is. And Jennifer, of course, you are a farmer. How do the crops look in Iowa this year?
I've talked to several farmers around the state. I think we dealt with some major drought issues, really all across Iowa. But for the most part, I think that the genetics have helped us out, and yields seem to be better than they have been and better than expected. Better
than expected. That's what we're hearing from the field. That's Jennifer Carrico, editor at Wallace's Farmer. Well, it's time to check in on harvest progress with another one of our In the Cab with Pioneer segments. This week, we're going to Boone, Iowa to talk with farmer Kyle Chestnut. Kyle, thanks so much for talking with us this week.
Yes, thank you.
I understand soybean harvest is almost wrapped up on your operation. Fill us in. How do yields look this year?
Yes, we've been very, very fortunate here in Boone County that we've had some excellent yields. Of course, like every year, things are variable, but for the most part, very, very pleased with soybean yields.
Well, that's good to hear. What type of bean were you planting on the farm this year, Kyle?
This year, we were 100% A-Series E3 soybeans.
What was it that made you go with the whole farm in the Enlist soybean series?
Yes, so a couple years ago, we experimented with the Pioneer A-Series soybeans with the new E3 Enlist soybeans, and just wanted to get our feet wet, see how they'd perform. Obviously, before I went out there and discussed those soybeans with farmers and had other farmers grow them, we wanted to try them on our own operation. And after that first year, we were thrilled. The yield performance was there. The weed control and the options with the weed control system of the E3 soybeans was second to none. So we converted everything to the A-Series Pioneer soybeans.
Kyle, you mentioned talking with the growers there at your seed sales operation about Enlist soybeans. What's been the response from them? Have they been pleased with rolling them into their rotations?
Yeah, so we started the process probably 3 years ago when the A-Series soybeans first came out, and we probably sold half of my customers with E3s and the other half with a different platform. And after that year of half my customers being with E3 and the other half with the other generation of soybeans, the performance of the E3s was second to none. The weed control was fantastic, and the pest resistance was great. So it was an easy transition to have everyone go to the E3 soybeans.
Well, that pest resistance question, Kyle, in your neck of the woods there around Boone, Iowa, what type of disease pressures did you encounter this year?
Well, one of the biggest ones we battle in Boone County is soybean cyst nematode. And the E3s allow us to have some P188, 788 resistance, as well as the Peking cyst resistance, which is great. So we can rotate those soybeans across acres every other year, or different farms that have different cyst pressure. And then when it comes to sudden death as well, something we battle every year, the scores and the ratings on these new A-Series and the soybeans has been fantastic. And our issues that we faced with sudden death was almost non-existent this year.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, Kyle, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us for this week's Pioneer in the Cab. That's Kyle Chestnut. Thanks for talking with us.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
There has never been a better time to upgrade your combine, tractor, and grain cart tires. Save up to $300 per tire when you buy 2 or more eligible Firestone Ag radial tires this fall. Visit firestoneag.com for more details. And now it's time to talk markets. Joining us this week is Joe Camp, the Director of Managed Programs with Comstock Investments. And Joe, thanks for talking with us.
Thanks so much.
Last week, USDA released their World Agricultural Supply and Demand estimates, Joe, and since then, the soybean market's been the only one that's had some strength. How has the balance sheet changed for soybeans?
Definitely with soybeans, you see at the end of the balance sheet that carry-out estimate at 220 million bushels. That's by all accounts tight. And that comes from not only supply side reductions that we observed on this last report with the yield being lowered by a little bit more than anticipated, now on par exactly with the year ago estimate. But this is now 2 important months where we had the September and the October crop reports feature yield reductions. And so the expectation would be for that trend to potentially continue into next month as well. On the demand side, you've still got really good usage on all accounts, lower expectations for exports, but we need to conserve some soybeans for what we're seeing in this processing sector and the real ramping up of soybean crush demand, which is the big bright spot for the soy complex. It's of course attached to a higher crude oil market and this biodiesel program that's been expanding here, and something that's keeping that balance sheet tight.
Lots to watch there. Joe, you talked to growers across the country. The drop in yield expectations on this month's report, does that confirm with what you're hearing from the ground? Unfortunately
so, because of that dry spell that so many had experienced at the tail end of this season here. It's been reflected in a yield that, as mentioned, has come down here in these past couple of reports and does fit more in line with what we've heard from farmers, which is just extreme variability. That's the name of the game this year. I mean, we've always got variability when we're talking about weather and its influence on yields, but this year more than ever before, it seems, where you talk to farmers that have some strong enough yield results in one place and then you can go 10 miles away and it's a near disaster. So variability and not the type of consistency that unfortunately would allow for one of those top yields.
All right, we saw a 50-cent-ish pop this past week. Joe, is the harvest low in for soybeans?
I feel as though it is because of the time of the year that we got past this crop report, and it's this first part of the harvest wrapping up that really can signal a shift in focus towards more bullish attitudes heading into the rest of the fall.
Well, we don't see too many more bullish attitudes in the corn market, but it's not getting substantially more bearish. Joe, where are we at right now with this corn market?
Corn futures are similar to soybeans in the sense that they are running up against some important levels of resistance. The nearby soybeans have poked above that $13 mark. Now December corn needs to do it with $5 if it's going to keep going. These past couple of months it's been relatively sideways, but in a sense, also a big rounding bottom potentially forming that could help us move higher along with soybeans into the rest of the fall. But first, it's that $5 mark that we need to get past. That's an important level of resistance, not only technically, speculatively, but it's an area where there's some offers stacked up from farmers willing to sell some of this fresh harvest. But you make a couple tries at that and eventually build that into an area of support, and that could be a more bullish look for corn heading forward.
All right, lots to talk about there. Joe, we'll have more when we come back right after this on these markets for this week in Agribusiness. There has never been a better time to upgrade your combine tractor and grain cart tires. Save up to $300 per tire when you buy 2 or more eligible Firestone Ag radial tires this fall. Visit firestoneag.com for more details. We're back talking markets with Joe Camp of Comstock Investments. And Joe, looking at the corn balance sheet, we did see the yield come down again from USDA. Is there more declines ahead?
This latest lowering of the estimate did bring the corn yield average down to just below where we were pegged last year, and that, like soybeans, is now 2 months in a row for these crop reports that included not only crop scouts, but then eventually here lately the harvest field samples moving into those USDA offices for testing. Well, because that last couple of lower yields is the trend, I'd expect that can continue, and we'll get another fractional reduction here in this next November report to help tighten the balance sheet up a little further.
On the demand side, Joe, you mentioned we've seen a rally in crude oil here these past few weeks. Is this going to create some opportunity for ethanol producers to make a little more revenue? Yeah,
it feels like it's already been a source of demand strengthening here for ethanol usage. We're hitting up near some record highs in terms of overall production, and recently seeing that ethanol stocks are drawing down. And at this point of the year, as we're getting that fresh harvest in, it's a good source of demand out there, something that's absolutely supported basis from those processors.
Joe, the wheat market, you mentioned that long bottom we're seeing in the corn market. It appears to be similar in wheat. Is there anything that can move this market one way or the other?
Well, global production issues are now the focus. We will keep an eye on, of course, U.S. planting progress for the winter crop. Maybe acres down just slightly from a year ago. Lower prices aren't that attractive for farmers here, but we do look at those production issues abroad, likely still being linked to El Nino, particularly for South America and Australia. Their crop, for example, expected to fall by at least a third this year because of dry weather there. So down the road, we could start to get some demand back into the U.S. market, and that would be what we need to see prices turn around.
But based on planting progress so far, that down the road could be 4 to 6 months before the market would take note of those reduced supplies.
It could be. We would think that wheat has the potential to turn sooner than that, because we talked about some generally friendly expectations, at least seasonally, for corn and soybeans. And I think wheat could be a follower higher behind a rally like we've seen starting for soybeans, and as mentioned, could start to unfold for corn as well.
Well, while we've got you here, Joe, I want to make sure we have a little bit of time to talk livestock. We're heading into the winter. The cattle market has been in near record territory for quite some time. Can that continue?
It can, from the sense that it's going to be a while before we get these supplies built back higher. We're dealing with several years now of herd contraction, and that's simply been the driver for higher prices. But we are at a point, too, in the year where we're transitioning more towards a focus on demand and maybe seeing some pushback against these beef prices that might be some 20% or more higher than a year ago. It's the end of the summer grilling season. We're going to head into the fall and into the winter and maybe see some slight reduction in demand. But going forward, we can generally keep this support under the market as long as these fed cattle supplies stay as tight as they are.
All right, and it could be some time before those supplies start to rebound. Joe Camp, Director of Managed Programs with Comstock Investments, thanks for talking with us this week.
Glad to join you, Mike.
Colby Ag Tech is brought to you by Copperhead Ag Products. Visit copperheadag.com for more information. With all the activities at harvest time, it might be worth having a few more eyes around the farm. Well, on this week's tech segment, Chad Colby's got some suggestions as to how you can do just that.
I love the simplicity of some technology. Most of us are using cameras in a lot of different ways, and a friend of mine's farming operation this week, he showed me how he used some cameras. Now, he put these up several years ago. This is a wired camera that's into his wireless network right here at his dryer facility. And as you see me pulling up, of course, the screen recording is me getting out of my vehicle at the farm. Now, listen, I think on a farm and ranch, the applications for cameras are pretty self-explanatory. But if you haven't done your homework lately, there is a lot of great new technology. And one of the things that we were talking about this week was all the wireless technology. There's so many amazing new cameras with better sensors with some really cool wireless technology where you don't have to have this thing next to power. It's got its own battery supply. So maybe you're trying to keep an eye on your grain unloading or livestock, or maybe you want to keep track visually of that pivot in the field. I could go on and on of the applications. There's a lot of neat cameras. Check out this one from Vosker. Not only does this one not need internet, it also does not need electricity. This camera is completely self-sustaining. It's got the ability to stream back 1080 full HD videos. It's got motion detection, GPS tracker, and of course, as you can see there, along with the camera, it also has in the box a big solar panel. So it doesn't need anything, and this system is fully weather resistant. At a price point for the camera, I think this one was around $450. They have some a little cheaper than that as well. But the neatest part about this system, in my opinion, is that it doesn't need anything. It doesn't need any internet. It doesn't need any electricity. This little promotion video you can see here, it's super easy to set up. It's going to hook through your smartphone, so you'll get those alerts and all those things right through your phone. And I can't help thinking about all the amazing applications. So if you're in the market for a new camera, do your homework. This camera here from Vosker is a great example of some new technology that really has its place on farms and ranches. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you, Chad. It's incredible how video quality has improved on those security cameras just in a few short years. Well, folks, leave it here. We're not done talking technology. Later on in the program, we'll get another segment in our Tech at Work series.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Pentair Hypro, a global leader in innovative spray technology for farmers for over 75 years.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. You know, this time of year, conversation in agriculture typically turns its focus to the harvest and what's happening in the grain crops. But livestock producers are out there every day in their pastures and in their feedlots and active on Capitol Hill. And I felt like it was time to check in with that industry. Joining us now is Ethan Lane. He serves as the Senior Vice President for Government Affairs with the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. And Ethan, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Great to see you, Mike.
I know there's been a lot of action on Capitol Hill. We can dive into the impact of that here in just a moment. But from a legislative priorities perspective, Ethan, what's NCBA working on this fall?
Well, obviously, it continues to be Farm Bill season now that we're several weeks past the expiration of the 2018 Farm Bill. And that means that is really still the legislative focus here on Capitol Hill. You know, that takes many forms, whether that is the fight we saw over the ag appropriations bill that ultimately failed a few weeks back on the House floor. That ends up being sort of a precursor to what we could see amendment-wise when the Farm Bill eventually makes it to the floor, or you know, kind of that just normal legislative process that we always see playing out this time of year with appropriations riders throughout the sort of cattle supply chain impact, whether that's on the ag production side or on the natural resource side. But it was really helpful to get a little bit of a snapshot into where we might see problems arise in a Farm Bill fight. In particular, these continued attacks on the checkoff from radical animal rights activists and others looking to dismantle that system that 20 some odd commodities use to make sure that they can promote those products both here and around the world. We've seen unprecedented attacks on the federal checkoff system in the last year or year and a half. Most of those, as I said, coming from those radical animal rights activists. But those attacks were beat pretty soundly in that appropriations process. There was an amendment from Victoria Spartz working to try to gut the checkoff system. Only 49 of 435 members of Congress voted for that amendment. So it was well and truly defeated soundly. So we're going to continue to see that be a top priority issue for us as we track this Farm Bill process going forward. But alongside that, obviously, it's tough to talk about some of these spending issues in agriculture in an environment where obviously we're seeing a lot of pressure to cut spending. That agricultural appropriations bill was defeated because farm state Republicans didn't like some of those really deep cuts that Freedom Caucus members and others were pushing for. That's going to continue to be a theme, whether it's our industry and others looking for adequate resources for voluntary conservation programs on the ground, whether it's our industry seeking adequate funding for a foot and mouth disease vaccine bank in the Farm Bill to ensure that we're prepared in the event that foot and mouth disease comes back to American soil after 100 years of keeping it at bay, whether that means talking about making sure there's money available to pay for electronic ID tags and readers if USDA is able to move forward with their rulemaking to mandate electronic ID for about 11% of the herd that we know is coming down the pipeline. You know, a lot of those priorities really do come back to availability of federal funds to ensure that those programs are going to work. And that's before we start talking about risk management tools and disaster assistance, which continue to be really big issues for producers around the country who, at this point, are tired of hearing words like black swan that are supposed to mean something that only happens every once in a while, but that we're seeing on a very regular basis, whether that's drought, fire, flood, you name it. These are things that producers have to deal with. And when that happens, we need to make sure those programs are available and responsive. So that's going to continue to be our focus as we move through this process.
Well, and as you mentioned, as we move through this process, it is going to take time. Current disruption is the discussion and debate over the speaker in the House. Understand there might be progress there. Ethan, if they get a speaker, what's the timeline for a Farm Bill look like?
Well, it's highly likely that we're going to see some sort of a temporary speakership. You know, right now we have Speaker Pro Tem Patrick McHenry from North Carolina that was installed through a procedural move after Kevin McCarthy lost his bid to maintain his speakership. We've seen Jim Jordan lose several votes and lose support in each of those votes in his bid for speakership. And some of that opposition is coming from farm state Republicans. These are folks who are very concerned about the need to ensure that there's continuity of operation for these programs, and they're worried that those hardline Freedom Caucus members aren't going to allow for that. If Patrick McHenry is installed in a more expansive role to run that process, that's going to provide some opportunity to find an extension for the Farm Bill, which is probably the most likely scenario at this point. We're really not in a place where we're expecting to see any real action on the Farm Bill in the next few months or even maybe into the first half of next year. That also allows some room for them to process some kind of a continuing resolution. That's going to provide some stability as well. The shutdown plans that we were prepared to send out to our members at the end of September were painting a scenario that I guarantee producers around the country don't want to have to deal with. The Biden administration very clearly articulated that their intent was to inflict maximum pain on producers and on the American people in order to force the House of Representatives to a bargaining position on a spending bill. You can have your opinions on whether that's warranted or not. I would argue that making farmers and ranchers that feed the world pay the price for shenanigans going on in Washington is inappropriate. Nevertheless, we want to make sure we avoid that if possible. And if we do see a temporary speaker involved, that goes a long way towards maybe creating some movement that would avoid that.
All right, lots to watch as this year moves forward. That's Ethan Lane, Vice President of Government Affairs at the National Cattlemen's Beef Association.
This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. It was recently reported that organic food sales in 2022 came in at $61.7 billion. That's 6% of all food sold in the United States. And it's a segment that Farm Progress is getting more active in. Joining us now to discuss it is Matt Youngman, the National Events Director for Farm Progress. Matt, thanks for talking with us.
Glad to be with you.
Let's talk a little bit about this Organic Grower Summit happening in Monterey, California. Matt, what can you tell us?
Really excited to be part of it. You know, it's great to grow, and it's great to grow into a segment that typically we have never, we've never done anything with in organic. So it's exciting to be part of a successful event. For this year, we're just going to watch it happen and help wherever we can help. But those folks out there have created a great event, and we're looking forward to participating and seeing where we can take it from here.
As you mentioned, this event has been happening. The Organic Growers Summit put on by Western Growers and OPN. This is their 6th year, Matt?
6th year, yes. And they've done a great job, sold out exhibit floor. And, it is unique, like organic would be. It's unique. It's not a trade show like we've had in the past, where it's about 50% education and about 50% time with the exhibitors, as well as some show and tell areas outside to look at the technology work.
Matt, what type of education happens at an event like this?
Well, a lot of it may be specific to things that would be local there. We talked about, not too far away, they call it the salad bowl, where everything that is in your produce aisle is being grown right there. So some of it is specific to that. But then for anybody else around the country that might be an organic grower, might want to learn more about organics, there's a lot of things that be applicable to anybody, like soil health, plant health, marketing, packaging. A lot of those kind of things are going on at the event.
Attendees at the event this year, are they predominantly West Coast growers, or is it applicable to everybody across the country?
It's applicable to everybody, but it's kind of a West Coast. It's grown from that West Coast group there. So we kind of hope to be able to add to that by reaching out to farmers from across the country and around the world that might be interested in learning more about organic production.
Let's get the details one more time. Matt, what are the dates and where is the OGS event going to be?
So Organic Grower Summit, you can go to organicgrowersummit.com, register there. We have sponsorships still available for exhibitors, although the booth space is sold out. The event is November 29th and 30th at the Hyatt Regency in Monterey, California, and look forward to having everybody there. It's going to be a really cool event.
And Monterey, weather should be pretty good that week after Thanksgiving.
Weather will be good. Yeah, later we'll be in February we'll be in Syracuse, New York, and it won't be near as nice as what it'll be in Monterey in November.
This is the show to come to.
Yes.
Matt Youngman, National Events Director with Farm Progress. Thanks for filling us in on what's coming here in Monterey in November.
Glad to be with you.
And folks, leave it here. We've got the next installment in our Tech at Work series. Our friend Willie Vogt had the chance to travel to Kentucky to see the John Deere Operations Center in operation.
This time out for Tech at Work, we traveled to Wallonia, Kentucky to visit Seven Springs Farms, where Joe Nichols has built a diversified operation since opening the operation in 1994. He discusses how technology he gathers on the operation has changed and how it helps him run the business.
I spend most of my days in the office, so therefore I'm able to track. We're on a large scale, large family farm. People say it's a factory farm. No, it's a large family farm that's run like we want to be as efficient as most factories. So I use it in tracking usually daily activities, making sure to find any uh-ohs before the coffee shop finds them for you. I want to know what's going on before anybody else knows what's going on, to be able to make sure we're doing everything the best we can do. And I track it that way, from just basically production, quality. I'm looking at it, the faster it loads, the quicker we know what's going on to make changes all across the operation.
Bart Peters with Seven Springs Farms discusses how the data he collects from John Deere Operations Center helps run the business, and frankly, how it's changed the nature of being a CFO for the operation.
We get data from everything, for fuel usage, efficiency per hour, yields. A lot of times I'll just watch the yield screen and get 2 or 3 combine screens going at once on my screen and just watch the yields come across the monitors. If we pulled out the list of things we talked about I was going to do when we started and what we're doing today, about half of it's the same, and half of it's probably was never even thought of then.
Joe Nichols and Bart Peters here at Seven Springs Farms in Wallonia, Kentucky, have found that the data they collect in the business helps manage in new ways and keep the diversified farm successful. Reporting for This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Willie Vogt.
Well, that is quite an operation. Certainly looks like it takes a lot of technology to keep all of those pieces in communication. Our thanks to Willie Vogt for that Tech at Work.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead, presented by Pivot Bio Proven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot Bio Proven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
What's the weather going to do in your neck of the woods next week? Well, meteorologist Greg Solier has some guidance for us. Greg, Pacific Northwest got some rain showers last week. Is that going to repeat this week?
Yeah, some snow in the mountains as well. The autumn parade of weather systems getting going, and we're going to kind of fragment the jet stream pattern. We're going to get a northern branch going, a southern branch going, and when that northern branch begins to show up on the maps and charts, heads up for cold air. It will be on the move, and when that interacts with these weather systems, you get significant moisture. You know what we're speaking of here, certainly not rainfall. Colder air on the move across the Willamette Valley, Rogue River Basin, deepening trough here across the northern and central Rockies, and ahead of it, we'll get into some shower activity, including some snow near the Canadian border back west across sections of Big Sky Country. That's only the vanguard. Things do get ramped up middle and late portions of the week. Here's one low coming out, the more significant low just west of the Black Hills. A transition from rain probably to snow points on east, and there will be an accumulating snow parts of Big Sky Country, Black Hills, and points north and west. Bismarck, Mandan up into the Canadian border. Livestock managers as well be ready for a change to almost midwinter type cold. Not long lasting, mind you. It's El Nino, still a moderate one, so there should be a quick turnaround as we get into the new month of November. But in the meantime, pretty busy into the northern plains and parts of the Pacific Northwest. Yes, this is a tropical system. It's the remnants of Norma making her way into parts of Arizona and the Southwest, including New Mexico at time and West Texas. A couple of showers ahead of that weather system. Here comes the punch of cooler air across the valleys of California. Last week, even coastal sections of central and southern California were up past the 95-degree mark. As the week wears on, cooler air moves into the valley locales, windy weather through the desert Southwest, and here comes that storm system out of the central Rockies. Showers and thunderstorms of the central and southern plains, including here's Norma, soaking rains. Would you believe, Mike, for New Mexico and West Texas? It's actually just what the weather doctor ordered.
Absolutely. They could use a drink down there, but I know some folks up north had to park their combines last week because of rain showers. Is that going to repeat this week?
Yeah, they're probably going to have to park them for whatever reason here with snow in the forecast as well for the Dakotas primarily, the upper Midwest. So heads up with livestock operations and a pretty abrupt, rude change to colder there. It should be relatively short-lived here on the longer range weather maps and charts. Plenty of opportunity across the eastern Corn Belt, a little chill in the air, but moderation across the western complex. The leading edge of that weather system coming out of the northern and central Rockies drops in through Nebraska. Here comes the cold air, the northern branch of the jet with the shift from rain to snow across the northern and western Dakotas back through Big Sky Country. And that's a midwinter type cold, mind you. Otherwise, plenty of warmth and plenty of opportunity across much of the Corn Belt, especially eastern areas, to quicken the pace on harvest operations. A little bit behind into parts of Michigan and Ohio, a little more ahead of the game into the western complex, where again the welcome rains are just that as the week wears on. Down to the south and southern plains and southwestern states, here is Norma. Here is the showers and thunderstorms into the Rio Grande, and with time building across West Texas, warm, dry weather coming off a little nip in the air from frost and freeze last week as far south as the northern Delta, parts of the Tennessee Valley. This is the remnant circulation from Norma, windy conditions and soaking rains out of New Mexico, parts of Texas in through Bayou Country. Boy, we need it in this area. This is the worst of the ongoing central Gulf Coast region drought. Warmth makes it up across the Ohio Valley, and welcome shower and thunderstorm action, Mike, for parts of Kansas and Oklahoma.
Greg, how far east does that warmth spread next week?
It will make its way all the way into, with time, the Great Lakes region, eastern Corn Belt, not before a little nip in the air as you expect here from mid to late October into the Delmarva. Some frost potential there, freeze across eastern Ohio, parts of New York State, couple of showers still lingering here, but cool, dry, high pressure, better moisture reduction values and evaporative losses as the week wears on, as south winds pick up, warm temperatures prevail, and look at the expansion of shower activity late in the week and more so as the week wears on towards the weekend into the upper Midwest, western Great Lakes region. Yeah, colder air and a little snow in the air, and sizable snow back west of there. Over the southeastern states, a little frost patch or two, Tennessee Valley, dry weather down through northern and central Florida, as well as the blowtorched areas, pasture land, speaking of, through Louisiana and Texas. But then later in the week, it's the remnants of normal Gulf moisture, snappy weather system, showers and thunderstorms on the increase here, and a nice turnaround in temperatures for the perhaps last of a peanut harvest over the southeastern states.
Greg Solier is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country, presented by Pivot BioProven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot BioProven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
Greg Solier joins us with an update on his forecast. And Greg, next week you mentioned some rain. Who gets what and when?
Rain, snow, and fairly decent quantities of everything under the sun coming your way and our way. And again, not the way the rest of the fall season goes. It's time to get recharged of the ground. That's the trade-off. Harvest and the drought. And so that's the story. And yeah, some 1 to 2 inch rains late in the week and into the following weekend for the Corn Belt locales. Yes, there'll be a transition over to accumulating snow for parts of the northern plains, southern Canadian prairie. Remember the fires last year? Got to get moisture there. Welcome news, Pacific Northwest, Northern California. Look at the numbers there. Yes, that's Norma across Old Mexico, moving into the southern plains with time. Late in the week, big rains down there, and they'll take it across much of the far eastern states, better weather. But there will be a window of opportunity early to middle parts of the week for harvest across the Corn Belt.
The week of October 30th, Greg, temps look okay for Halloween trick-or-treating?
Yeah, it's a little on the nippy and scary and spooky side on temperatures. Might need the extra wardrobe over or under the costume for parts of the northern plains. Here's some warmth over the eastern part of the country. The jet stream is dug into parts of the central plains, and the end result, yeah, another round of some moisture expected. Again, drought improvement. Look at it this way. Probably snows up north of the Sioux, back into the northern Rockies, showers and thunderstorms, and you're on this edge of the jet here, so maybe severe weather potential for the Ohio Valley, back to dry time across the deep south and southeastern states.
The week of November 6th, Greg, what do you foresee?
Quick turnaround. This is a strong jet stream, so look at, we just plow that cold air right to the east. Nice turnaround in temperatures here. Warm up and some Chinook warming, so we'll get some melting snow through the northern plains. The warmth back across the southern states. Just a little prod of some cool to cold air still lingering over the Great Lakes region and the northeast and New England. Moisture-wise, things do quiet down. Another broadening window of opportunity, much of the central and southern Corn Belt. Main storm track up the Canadian border. Good news with moisture in the Pacific Northwest and up and down the eastern seaboard. Kind of a busy weather pattern there for the first half of November.
Do you see that warmth sticking around for that mid-November week of November 13th?
Yeah, there's nothing really much to speak of here. Likely to be lined up from the Missouri River Valley back westward. It's still a little lingering cool there, nothing bitter into the eastern states, and it's a northwest jet stream pattern, meaning a pretty quiet weather pattern, plenty of harvest opportunity across much of the heartland.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
In the some 25 years of weekly featuring an old tractor in Max's Tractor Shed on television, I don't think I've ever featured a tractor from the same community in back-to-back weeks. We're going to make an exception this particular week in Max's Tractor Shed. Brought to you by Mystic Lubricants. Mystic Lubricants producers are made to make it last. Well, a couple of years ago, we were on the Weber farm near Geneseo, Illinois. We were out there in our Plan Smart, Grow Smart series for the folks at BASF, and we had the opportunity to visit with Justin Weber. There on their farm where they produce corn and soybeans. We had the chance to see some big modern machines out in that farming operation, and then there was this tractor. Take a look at this Farmall Cub. The day that we were there on the Weber farm, the subject of Grandpa came up, Mr. Rodney Weber. He had passed away not many months before because of the pandemic, and that's when we became aware of this international Farmall Cub that Mr. Rodney Weber had owned. It was very apparent that to Mr. Weber's son David and his grandson Justin, this was a special tractor. It deserved special attention, a special restoration, and I will tell you, from my personal inspection, it got a special restoration, and there was young farmer Justin Weber, accustomed to being in the cab of magnificent, much, much bigger farm machines, looking with pride from the seat of his grandfather's IH Cub, made in 1967, a tractor that has a very special place today on the Weber farm, outside of Geneseo, Illinois. Mark Stock has a special place right here every week. We bring him in for the Big Iron Report now.
Well, Max, on October the 24th, Big Iron and Hudson Equipment, your John Deere dealer in Kentucky, Indiana, Michigan, and Tennessee, will be selling more late model John Deere machinery. 2022 year model 8R340 mechanical front tractors, numerous John Deere 770, 780, and 790 combines. They have several 6000 series John Deere tractors as well. Late model flex heads and corn heads. Late model John Deere 24-row 30-inch planters, late model John Deere R40 38 cell-propelled sprayers, all selling with no reserve on October the 24th. On October the 25th, W&M Welding out of Sedalia, Missouri will sell 167 items, including a Grove all-terrain crane, a Caterpillar 963C track loader, a JLG SkyTrack telehandler. On October the 25th, C&B Material Handling LLC will sell 53 different forklifts and telehandlers to the highest bidder, all makes and models. And Max, everybody has been talking about the two-day collector car auction, October 30th and 31st. Check out the unbelievable lineup of collector cars. You'll find what you're looking for on BigIron.com.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Pioneer, developing new generations of seed innovations for new generations of farmers. Pioneer, what's next happens here. We like to get to know that next generation of ag leaders, and this week we're talking with Addison Womack. He serves as the Arkansas State FFA Southern Region Vice President. Addison, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about your experience with agriculture before joining FFA.
Well, before joining FFA, I had a little experience with agriculture. I ran a small poultry operation with about 35 chickens. I had a few goats in my backyard. It was just a small hobby farm, but nothing too big within the agricultural industry.
But you joined FFA, now you're in leadership. Addison, what was it that made you want to serve more in FFA?
Well, it was actually my 10th grade year. I was a green hand in the organization, and I went to one of our Arkansas leadership conferences during the summer, and I fell in love with it. I saw the state officers as a young kid, and I said, I want to be one of them one day. It just really sparked an interest in me.
And so now you've got that opportunity serving as a state officer. What are you excited about as you look for this year ahead?
Really, my biggest excitement is getting to make that connection with members, getting to really have one-on-one connections and help them out of places, let them know that they have a place in this organization no matter what their background is. They don't have to come from an agriculturalist background. They can be a city kid and fit in just as well.
Absolutely. And Addison, are you hoping to make a career in agriculture?
Yes, sir, I am. Actually, I am studying at the Southern Arkansas University for agricultural education. I hope to be in the classroom and hopefully one day work for National FFA.
Well, we wish you the best of luck. That's Addison Womack, Arkansas State FFA Southern Region Vice President. Last week on the program, we met Brian Regal of Regal Dairy down in Missouri. We talked about Brian's dairy operation, but we also got a chance to talk to him about his recent diversification. Brian's in the hemp business, and I had the chance to ask him what prompted that move.
So the dairy farm is wears you out. It's hard on the bones, a lot of walking. Got my arthritis to flare up a lot. I found a lot of relief with CBD. And then when the opportunity came to grow hemp and to go that route and help others, we jumped on board and did it.
CBD, that's the key phrase here when we're talking hemp. Can you explain how CBD is different than other places people might encounter hemp-derived products?
So the CBD is what we're usually going to associate with hemp, and that's going to be arthritis, anxiety, things of those things it'll help a bunch with. But there's a lot of cannabinoids that we got to talk about with hemp. It even goes to delta 8s, delta 9s, THCs. CBG would be another key player from the hemp industry. And we got a lot of research and stuff that'll be coming forward that'll help people understand how to use it properly and help doctors communicate with their patients hopefully soon.
How long has South Point Hemp been in operation?
South Point Hemp was formed in 2020, the first year that we were legally able to grow and process, and took advantage of that and continue to grow.
So for South Point Hemp, what are the products that you are taking to the market? Where can consumers encounter the brand?
So the majority of the South Point Hemp brand is going to be in pharmacies or grocery stores, places, CBD shops, where people are there to help them understand the product and how it might benefit them.
What sort of geographic retail? Are you going to be able to sell in all 50 states? Are you looking predominantly in Missouri? How does that work?
We're looking to expand the brand in any place where there's a space or people need a consistent product that they want to know they can rely on. I believe there's at least 48 states that we can legally sell into quickly.
So 2020, you got started. Now you've got a manufacturing facility, you've got a retail operation. Brian, where do you see it going from here? What's the future for hemp and South Point?
So we're kind of circling around mainly on the medical side of things, and we don't want to forget that cannabis can also be recreational. So we're starting to pursue that market, and that's we're going into a beverage line with UR Lit.
So this would be a product that would have some sort of psychoactive component.
Yeah, it would be slightly intoxicating per se. You don't want to be drinking it and driving. You got to be wise with those kind of things. But it's a way to sit around, open up, get the nerves to calm down and stuff like that.
CBD is here to stay, you believe, Brian? You're excited for this industry looking forward?
CBD is definitely here to stay. I think we're going to see a lot more of the medical side be talked about, as like I say, as soon as the research comes to light and doctors understand the product better.
So CBD is one component, but you also have a lot of other byproducts. There's a lot of fiber. There's a lot of other products in that hemp plant. Are there any designs for those products here? Are you going to be able to utilize them for anything?
So the fiber side on the dairy farm that I have, we grow some fiber hemp, and there's a processor nearby that's going to be breaking that down into bass fiber and hurd. So it'll go into insulations, plastics, many things. You know, they say 30,000 different items, and the opportunity is there for people to take it from after the processor and go with the next design that they want to do.
Well, our thanks to Brian Regal of South Point Hemp for teaching us about that diversification opportunity on his farm. Catch us next week. We'll talk to a cow-calf producer in Missouri who's diversified into the wedding business. Folks, thanks so much for joining us here this week for This Week in Agribusiness. Be sure to catch us next time, same place, same time, right here.
This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Case IH. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communications in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.